this technique give the client a too solid look? And not necessarily.
Right.
Maybe it could on super dry skin that takes pigment a little too well if I was using full strength pigment.
Right.
But in this particular post, I was using diluted pigment. We even had the diluted pigment caps in the video. And I talked about that I was using diluted pigment. So because I was using big needles, well, even though I was using big needles, even though I was using a large, 8 shader, because I was diluting that pigment way down, right? 80% soft effects dilution solution, only 20% pigment. No, there's no way I'm going to get too solid of a look. That brow is going to heal super soft and powdery.
So there's very little color in your cap.
Yeah. In that pigment cap, there's, one cap is like 50% pigment, 50% dilution solution. And, we use soft effects. I love soft effects. And then in one cap, 15 to 20% pigment. That's it. And the rest, I fill the rest up with soft effects, dilution. So there's not a lot of pigment in that cap. I'm not tattooing with full strength pigment or even a lot of pigment. And so, which is a great technique. I learned that in body tattooing, right? Mm-hmm. And that was, something I was able to teach a lot of my PMU colleagues, back in the day, 20 years ago.
I remember somebody asking you to make a chart.
And to make a chart, and I did, right? Uh-huh. And it's become pretty popular in PMU now.
Yeah.
It's still way popular. I mean, they do it daily in body tattooing. That's how they, with black and gray work. They
don't use soft effects. They use
witch hazel, or there's dilution solutions now.
You have to stir it all the time.
Yeah, they got to stir it all the time. That's why I had LI Pigments make soft effects, so we don't have to stir it all the time. It doesn't separate from the pigment. But it's a great way. So I think a lot of artists are under the impression that you can only get a super soft look or an ombre if you use single needle and whip shading. And no, you can get that look. Yes, whip shading, pendulum, single needle, amazing way to get that look. A super soft look, powdery look. But you can also use big needles, circles, and shoveling and just dilute your pigment way down and get a super soft, powdery look. And that's how I do a lot of my ombres. I'll use full strength pigment in the tail, maybe 50-50 through the body. And when I get to that bulb area, 10-15% pigment and the rest diluted. Mm-hmm. And it heals like to a beautiful transition brow, soft in the bulb, and by the time it gets to the tail, it's a little more fuller with pigment.
Because that's where you lose your color too first, isn't it? The tail, you usually lose your color first.
Yeah. Usually you lose your color first in the tail.
So better to have
when tails age, usually that's the first place it fades out is in the tail. Something about that skin in the temple, that temple area. I don't know what it is, but that's just been my experience. So, and the only time I use like the same dilution, like super diluted through a whole brow, is if the brow has hair throughout, but it's sparse, then I'll just use, same dilution, highly, highly diluted, and just put a little powdery backdrop, classic powder.
So natural.
It looks so natural, looks so good. It takes me 20 minutes, it takes me 20 minutes. So for all you listening, if the single needle, you're struggling with it, jump on a shader, learn to dilute pigments, and it's just a fantastic technique that you incorporate into your work with a single needle. It's not that you'll stop using single needle and at all. It's just another option. Being versatile. So okay, so we answered that question, right?
Yes.